In Caesarea, there was a Roman officer named Cornelius, a devout man who feared Yahweh and was known for his generosity to the poor. One day he had a vision in which a malach of Yahweh appeared and called his name. Terrified, Cornelius asked, "What is it, sir?" The malach replied, "Your prayers and acts of kindness have been noticed by Yahweh. Now send men to Jaffa to bring back a man named Shimon called Kefa. He is staying with a tanner named Shimon, whose house is by the sea." After the malach departed, Cornelius immediately called 2 of his servants and a faithful soldier and sent them to find Kefa. Meanwhile in Jaffa, Kefa went up to the rooftop to pray around noon. As he grew hungry, he fell into a vision and saw Shamayim open. A large sheet descended, filled with all kinds of animals, reptiles, and birds. A voice said, "Get up, Kefa, kill and eat." Kefa replied, "No, Adonai, I have never eaten anything unclean." The voice responded, "Do not call anything impure that Yahweh has made clean." This happened 3 times, and then the vision ended. As Kefa pondered its meaning, the men from Cornelius arrived and asked for him. The Ruach told Kefa, "3 men are looking for you. Go with them without hesitation." Kefa went down and asked why they had come. They explained that Cornelius, a righteous man who feared Yahweh, had been visited by a malach and instructed to send for him. Kefa invited them in as guests. The next day, Kefa traveled with them to Caesarea, accompanied by some believers. Cornelius had gathered his family and friends, eagerly awaiting them. When Kefa entered, Cornelius fell at his feet in reverence, but Kefa lifted him up, saying, "Stand up, I am only a man." Seeing the large gathering, Kefa said, "You know that it is against our law for a Yehudi to associate with those of the nations, but Yahweh has shown me that I should not call anyone impure. That is why I came without objection. Now, tell me why you sent for me." Cornelius explained the vision and how the malach had instructed him to send for Kefa. "Now we are here before Yahweh, ready to listen to everything you have been commanded to say." Kefa then declared, "I now understand that Yahweh does not show favoritism, but accepts all who fear him and do what is right." He spoke of Yahushua HaMashiach and how he was anointed with Ruach HaKodesh, performed miracles, was executed, and rose on the 3rd day. "We are witnesses of his resurrection," Kefa proclaimed. "Everyone who believes in him receives forgiveness of sins through his name." As Kefa was speaking, the Ruach HaKodesh came upon everyone in the house. The believing Yehudim who had come with Kefa were astonished that the Ruach had also been poured out on the people of the nations, for they heard them speaking in tongues and praying Yahweh. Kefa then declared, "Can anyone forbid them from being immersed in water? They have received the Ruach HaKodesh just as we have." He then ordered them to be immersed in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, and they asked him to stay with them for a few days. When Kefa returned to Yerushalayim, the believing Yehudim criticized him, saying, "You entered the house of uncircumcised men and ate with them?" Kefa explained everything, including his vision and how the Ruach HaKodesh had fallen upon the people of the nations. If Yahweh gave them the same gift he gave us, who was I to stand in his way? Upon hearing this, they stopped objecting and praised Yahweh, saying, "So then Yahweh has even granted the nations repentance that leads to life." Meanwhile, believers who had been scattered by persecution traveled to various regions, initially preaching only to the Yahudim, but some began preaching to the Greeks in Antioch, and many turned to Yahweh. When the assembly in Yerushalayim heard about this, they sent Barnabas to investigate. Seeing the grace of Yahuwah at work, he encouraged them to remain faithful. Then he went to Tarsus to find Shaul, bringing him to Antioch. For a year they taught many, and it was in Antioch that the followers of Yahushua were first called Mashiachim. During this time, prophets from Yerushalayim arrived, and one of them, Agav, predicted a great famine. The disciples decided to send relief to the believers in Yehuda, each giving according to their ability. They sent their gifts to the elders through Barnabas and Shaul. And around this time, King Herod began persecuting the Nazarene. He ordered the execution of Yaakov, the brother of Yochanan, by sword. When he saw this pleased the Yehudim, he proceeded to arrest Kefa as well. Since it was during the days of Matzah, Herod decided to delay his public trial until after Pesach. In the meantime, Kefa was imprisoned, and 4 squads of 4 soldiers each watched over him. While he was in prison, the community of believers prayed fervently for Yahuwah on his behalf. The night before Herod was to bring Kefa to trial, he lay asleep between 2 soldiers, bound with chains. While guards stood watch at the door, suddenly a malach of Yahuwah appeared, filling the cell with light. The malach tapped Kefa's side and said, "Hurry, get up, immediately." Immediately, the chains fell from Kefa's wrists. "Put on your clothes and sandals," the malach instructed, and Kefa obeyed. "Now throw on your robe and follow me." Kefa followed, though he thought he was seeing a vision. They passed the first guard, then the second, and finally reached the iron gate leading to the city. The gate swung open by itself, and they stepped outside into the street. After walking a short distance, the malach suddenly disappeared. Kefa stopped and looked around, realizing what had happened. "Now I know for sure," he whispered, "that Yahuwah sent his malach to rescue me from Herod and from everything that Yehudim were expecting." Realizing the miracle, he hurried to the house of Miriam, the mother of Yochanan, also called Mark, where many believers were gathered in prayer. Knocking at the outer gate, he waited. A servant girl named Rhoda came to answer, and when she heard Kefa's voice, she was so overjoyed that she ran back inside without even opening the door. "Kefa is standing outside," she exclaimed. "You're out of your mind," they told her. But she insisted. "It must be his malach," they murmured in disbelief. Meanwhile, Kefa kept knocking. When they finally opened the door and saw him, they were amazed. Motioning for them to be quiet, Kefa recounted how Yahuwah had miraculously freed him from prison. "Tell Yaakov and his brothers about this," he said before leaving for another place. At dawn, panic spread among the soldiers. Kefa had disappeared. Herod ordered a thorough search, but when Kefa could not be found, he interrogated the guards and sentenced them to death. In anger, he left Yehuda and went to stay in Caesarea. Herod was also fierce with the people of Tzor and Sidon. Desperate to regain his favor, they sought an audience with him, enlisting the help of Blastus, his chief personal servant. They pleaded for peace, as their cities depended on the king's lands for food. On the appointed day, Herod, dressed in royal robes, seated himself on the throne, and addressed the crowd. As he spoke, the people shouted, "This is the voice of a mighty one, not a man." At that moment, because he did not give glory to Yahuwah, a malach of Yahuwah struck him down. He was consumed by worms and died. Yet, despite Herod's cruelty, the word of Yahuwah continued to grow and spread, reaching more people than ever before. Thank you for liking, sharing, and supporting. Your encouragement means more than you know. Shalom.